Okay, so we have a way of communicating with the server. We are certainly passing things to the server. The server is echoing it back to us. But what we really like to be able to do is store this user who has just registered. We want to save it into a database, right? So let's do that. So to do that, we have slides to do this that you should take a look at here. It walks you through creating a remote server, database server. I'm going to be using a local database server. You should get that running first. Right? Make sure that it's running locally. You're happy with it, and then focus on connecting it to a remote server. So to add the capability of your Java server to be able to talk to a database server, we need to configure a database. So to do that, we'll need to add a couple of dependencies in our POM file. We'll have to say, hey, add the MySQL database connector, the Java MySQL connector, a particular version. And also, I don't want to have to deal with SQL. I don't want to have to type select or insert. I don't want to deal with any of that. Right? Instead, create a layer of abstraction on top of that. I only want to work with objects. I only want to work with objects. Let's have an ORM, the JPA ORM, deal with the nitty-gritty details of the inserts and the selects and the updates and the deletes in the database. All right? I don't want to deal with any of that. All right, so let's add these two dependencies. Okay, and we'll add it to our POM file. That's not it. In our POM file, here, I guess I had that earlier. Let's paste that in there. There we go. Okay, that's it. But now when it starts up, it's going to say, okay, you want me to use all this? Well, where is the database? Where is the database that I'm going to connect to? How do I log in there? So to do that, we configure that in the applications.properties file, this file right here. Right under source main resources, there's an application.properties file. See that? Right now it's empty. Right? It's empty. So instead, we're going to copy that, and we're going to put it right there. Okay? Just let's take a look at this real quick. So this is configuring the URL of the server. Where is the server running? And it says that it's JDBC. That's the low-level Java library that talks to a database, right? But then it's we're using the MySQL version of the JDBC driver, and we have a URL there that points to where the host is running. It's going to be localhost, right? And the schema, it'll be some schema for this particular course. Also the username and password, and notice also the hibernated DDL there. What this allows me to do is that it will automatically create the tables, right? The database tables for our objects. We only have to deal with objects, right? And behind the scenes, the JPA ORM will create all the tables for us. It'll look at the object and say, ooh, let me create a table for that, right? Based on the class name, based on our field names, it will create a table with equivalent fields, right? With equivalent names and equivalent data types. Okay? All right. All right. So, and this is for debugging purposes. It'll actually show the actual SQL that it's using to interact with the database, which will be pretty interesting. All right. Let's see. We have that. Now, notice that these curly brackets and dollar signs, what this allows you to do is configure these as environment variables. Okay, either as command line environment variables, or in your IDE, you can also configure your environment variables. In your run configuration, this is the one I'm using to execute my demo application here. If you go to environments, these are the values that I have. I have SQL running locally. One is 127.0.0.1. I have a database test, we'll change that, and have passwords WebDev and WebDev. Right? So let's create, let's start up Workbench, MySQL Workbench. I'll use the local connection, and I'll create a new database for us to use. So we'll call it WebDev underscore summer2 underscore 2018. Right? And I'll say apply. That'll create a brand new schema. And close. And I believe I already have a user called WebDev and WebDev. Yes, I do. All right, so I already have a user WebDev that has admin privileges. It can do everything we want to. All right, so I'm going to just change this, and I'm going to remove the test here. That was just me last night verifying that this was working. I'm going to say apply and close. All right, so now this host name, this DB schema, this username, and password are being derived from the environment variable, yes? What this is going to allow you to do is to have the same exact code be able to run locally and also remotely when you deploy it on Heroku, right? Because on Heroku, you have different environment variables, right? Pointing to a remote SQL server as opposed to pointing to your local SQL server. Make sense? All right. Okay, let's see. We got that. So notice that our database, our current database, is empty. There are no, actually, oh, that's last night. This is the one that we just created, right? This is WebDev Summer 2008. There are no tables. There are no tables. So I want to create tables. So how do we do that? Well, we can go back to our user, and we want to use the magic of JPA, of ORMs, Object Relational Mapping. Like the name suggests, it maps objects to relational databases, ORM. And the way we do that is we use the JPA annotations. We say, hey, this is an entity. What does that mean? This is a table, right? This is something that needs to be stored in a database. What's the name of that table? The table? Well, you can derive that from the name of the class. Unless I tell you otherwise, I could tell you that I want to call it something else. But by default, it'll use the name of the class. Right? So there'll be a table generated called user. And we need to import that. There it is. OK. What else? We also need a unique identifier. Right? Perhaps username. We could use the username as a unique identifier. I always prefer to use just an additional field, an integer ID, which will be our unique identifier. And we'll need the setter and getter for this as well. So setter and getter for the ID, and we'll generate it at the end. OK, we have setters and getters for the ID. All right, so there'll be an additional, yes? Is there a reason to use the object integer? No, you can use the primitive. All right, so we need to declare and tell JPA that indeed that is my primary key, right? So that when you generate it on the server, on the MySQL, you will declare it with a constraint as a primary key. So to do that, we use the annotation @ID. So now it knows it's a primary key. Right, so let's import that. Also, I don't want to have to handle the values of my primary key. I don't want to have to say, oh, use this ID 1, 2, 3, 2, 4, 5, whatever. Right? I want the database to handle that for me automatically. Right. So to do that, we're going to say that this is a generated value. Okay. Right? Meaning, have the database handle this. I don't want to handle it. Right? And there are many strategies depending on the vendor that you're using. If this is Oracle, typically there'll be a sequence from where to draw the unique identifiers, right? Or if it's a SQL Server or MySQL, they have different strategies by which they derive the unique identifiers, right? So you can configure the strategy, right? You can say that the strategy that I want is identity, meaning you handle it. Right? Meaning start from 1 or whatever and then just increment from there on indefinitely. Right? So start 1, 2, 3, 4, or depending on the vendor, it might start at 10, 20, 30, 40, whatever. Okay? Meaning I'm leaving it up to you, you handle. Right? Make sure that these are unique. Right? All right, so we're delegating a lot of stuff to the database. That's it. That's all we need to do. Now this is mapped to a table. The table doesn't yet exist. Let's restart our server. Notice that this user, the only difference from before and after is that we added annotations. As far as Java is concerned, this is just a plain Java object. It can be treated like any other object. It can be instantiated. You can call setters and getters just like any other object. The difference is that now JPA is handling and validating that this has an equivalent in MySQL. Right, so notice that now we do have a table. See that? If we open it up, we do have a user table that was not there before. Right? JPA generated a create command, and it created our table for us. And we can take a look at the create statement that was used. We can send to the create statement. This is a create statement that was generated. Right? It created the ID, first name, last name, password. Notice that it's even using its own naming convention. Right? It used instead of using camel casing in Java, it used underscore in SQL, using the proper naming convention in SQL. Notice also that we have the ID being a constraint as the primary key. See that? All right? Excellent. We have a table for us to be able to store data. Very good. So now that we have content, we have a place to put our users. We need to actually put them there. All right? So how do we do that? Right? So to do that, we're still going to use JPA. We created a data model, right? We mapped it to a table. Let's now actually insert something in there, and let's do that next.